Billionaire hedge fund owner with $8.1 billion to his name, Paul Tudor Jones, just went on national news and dropped an absolute bombshell that I believe is going to only further accelerate the hedge fund race that we are watching get into Bitcoin today. Let's not forget, 16 of the top 25 hedge funds in the world own Bitcoin. And now Paul Tudor Jones, the grandfather of hedge funds, went on national news and said this.
And this conference, but before we do that, is this, given all of the things you're saying, are you off buying gold and Bitcoin and
I think all roads lead to inflation. We're going to end up,
but does all roads lead to inflation, therefore gold is a good investment? Is Bitcoin a good investment to you?
I'm long gold, I'm long Bitcoin. I think commodities are so ridiculously underowned, so I'm long commodities. I think most young people find their inflation hedges via the NASDAQ. That's also been great. It's probably some combination. I probably have some basket of gold, Bitcoin, commodities, and NASDAQ, something like that. And I would own zero fixed income. If I had my cash, it'd be very short term. The playbook to get out of this, you see it in Japan right now. They have 2% inflation, 30 basis points overnight. They don't want to raise rates. The playbook to get out of this is that you inflate your way out and you have a small tax on the consumer and you run interest rates and nominal growth rate, interest rates below inflation and nominal growth above inflation. And that's how you reduce your debt to GDP. So you're going to have the Fed they should be easy. They should be
easy. You want them to cut.
So just real quickly, every 100 basis points, given where our debt to GDP right now, every 100 basis points is worth about 90 billion a year to the deficit, 90 billion. So yes, if we're trying to stabilize debt to GDP, we want to run the most dovish monetary policy that we can without letting inflation become too much of a tax on the citizenry. So yes, all roads lead to inflation. That's historically the way every civilization has gotten out, is they've inflated away their debts.
All roads lead to inflation. The man who started the thesis, the great monetary inflation in 2020, and called Bitcoin the fastest horse in this great debasement, he's now come out again in what I believe is the beginning of the 2024 Bitcoin bull market. Again, this man was one of the men responsible for triggering the 2020 Bitcoin bull market. Who remembers what happened? I'm going to show you guys what happened, obviously. But if you really kind of think back to 2020, we all remember Michael Saylor becoming the first public corporation to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet in August 2020. That was a watershed moment. But there was a billionaire who adopted Bitcoin before Michael Saylor in May of 2020. Of course, we're talking about the man with an $8.1 billion net worth, Mr. Paul Tudor Jones himself. Look at the date of this article, May 9th, 2020. My best bet is that it will be Bitcoin. Bitcoin will be the best inflation hedge. This man has a record in the hedge fund space that is unmatched by most people. There are not many people in the world who have got a better record than Mr. Paul Tudor Jones. That's why we need to be paying very close attention to what Mr. Paul Tudor Jones is saying, because guess what? Not only did he predict the great monetary inflation in 2020, let's not forget, in 2020, was it common consensus that we would see any inflation? No. The article I just showed you came from May 2020. At the time, most people thought that inflation would be transitory. At the time, most people thought that our central bankers had things under control. But who remembers this video right here? This is from May 9th, 2020. Again, have a look at the price of Bitcoin. I want you to have a look at the little ticker here on CNBC. Bitcoin was under $10,000, and we had this billionaire, Mr. Paul Tudor Jones, go on national news, CNBC, saying this.
Welcome back to Fast Money. One of Wall Street's most successful hedge fund managers sending a giant shockwave across the cryptocurrency market today.
One of Wall Street's most successful hedge fund managers sent a shockwave across Wall Street. Just listen to that intro again.
Welcome back to Fast Money. One of Wall Street's most successful hedge fund managers sending a giant shockwave across the cryptocurrency market today. Paul Tudor Jones reportedly buying Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation. Jones comparing the cryptocurrency to the gold trade back in the 1970s, calling it the fastest horse in this environment. Let's break this bombshell down with our own Bitcoin baller, Brian Kelly. BK, I know crypto Twitter was just on fire today with this.
More so than ever. Crypto Twitter is a funny place, but yeah, I mean, certainly having somebody of Paul Tudor Jones' pedigree and caliber come in and kind of put their stamp of approval on this asset class got everybody really excited.
When making the comparison to gold back in the 1970s, I mean, if you followed the evolution of gold, and Guy probably knows this better than I do, but at one point in time, you're buying gold and the ETF didn't exist. When the ETF existed, it became much more accessible to a lot of different investors, and it sort of it democratized it and also took away that sort of bang for your buck when it comes to the movement of gold because there wasn't scarcity involved with it. Can you see the same thing happening with Bitcoin, especially as there's talks about ETFs as this continues to go mainstream? I mean, if this is truly sort of a flag being planted in mainstream investment, the next step could in fact be ETFs.
I mean, it could be. We haven't seen it yet. I think we're a long way away from an ETF based on what the SEC has said. So at this point in time, it's much more of an institutional, well, actually retail can get into it fairly easily, but you're buying the spot market. And I think when you look back at the gold market in the 70s, that's when gold was no longer pegged.
Okay, so I hope you guys get what I'm trying to paint here. When Paul Tudor Jones makes a prediction, you need to be paying attention. When he predicted in May 2020, we would see the great monetary inflation, everybody called him wrong. Everybody said Paul Tudor Jones is a loser. He's a maverick. Okay, he's predicted lots of things correct, but we're not going to see inflation because the central planners have things under control. But we all know what happened. Again, this man predicted the 1987 Black Monday crash. He made a fortune off it. Okay? Have a look at this headline. The fastest horse. Billionaire who predicted 1987 crash is now betting on Bitcoin. Now, again, I don't think this is true, but I don't remember this to be true. Paul Tudor Jones is betting $400 million that Bitcoin will be the best performing asset of the decade. And his endorsement could trigger an inflow of investment. Now, I don't remember Paul Tudor Jones investing $400 million into Bitcoin. Somebody fact check me in the live stream if you would like to, because let me tell you, that is a fair chunk of chump change. It's a lot of money, $400 million. Okay, but he was the first billionaire to really bring eyeballs on Bitcoin in 2020, in May 2020. Okay, again, we could see CNBC was losing their mind when Paul Tudor Jones was saying things like this, saying, look, we're going to see a great monetary inflation. What did we see? Well, we know that we saw the biggest inflation spike in history in the Western world since the 1970s, okay? Not in history, since the 1970s. We saw 9% CPI inflation, and we all know real inflation was a lot higher than that. Come on, I mean, we all know that, right? Paul Tudor Jones said Bitcoin would be the fastest horse. It was in 2020 and 2021. Again, what was the price of Bitcoin in this CNBC interview that I have for you guys? Was $9,000. Was that correct? Have a look at that. $9,000, and CNBC's losing their mind saying, this hedge fund billionaire doesn't know what he's talking about. Predicting Bitcoin to be the fastest horse. We're not even going to have a race because we're not even going to have inflation. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The mainstream media is always wrong. Pay attention to what the billionaires are doing. Pay attention to what the whales are doing. The whales are buying Bitcoin at unprecedented rates today. And we now have the billionaires, once again, like 2020, lining up 6 months after the Bitcoin halving to get a piece. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm bullish. I am incredibly bullish on everything that is happening. Okay? I think Paul Tudor Jones knows more than most people know. Okay, I think we do need to be paying attention to what these billionaires are doing. Because not only are they buying a lot of Bitcoin, but out of the top 25 hedge funds around the world, 16 of them have exposure to Bitcoin. I want to talk more about the hedge funds and the hedge fund race that I believe we are seeing come to the Bitcoin space now. But again, I want to remind you guys, if you think the billionaires are bullish and the billionaires right now are scrambling to buy some Bitcoin, you probably need to buy some Bitcoin yourself, okay? If you're new and if you don't own Bitcoin, please, I would encourage you, just go and spend 10 hours learning about Bitcoin. There's a reason why the world's largest asset manager, an $8.1 billion net worth man by the name of Tudor Jones, is buying Bitcoin. There's a reason why nation states are adopting Bitcoin. Okay, if you don't quite understand Bitcoin yet, I'd encourage you, just go do 10 hours of research. When you're ready to buy some Bitcoin, I would love to point you towards Rhino Bitcoin. We believe they're the best and the safest place to not only buy Bitcoin, but you can sell Bitcoin, you can send cash globally using the remittance network that Rhino Bitcoin utilizes. Okay, Rhino is the Bitcoin banking solution for the future. They do all sorts of really cool things. In the future, you're even going to be able to borrow against your Bitcoin. As you can see, they've got a little bit of a slick user interface. We're big fans of everything that Rhino is doing. And if you are looking for somewhere to buy your first piece of Bitcoin, or even just upgrade the exchange or the service provider you're using, we recommend you check out Rhino. You can find everything you need for Rhino linked down below in the description of today's chat. But let's talk a little bit more about Tudor Jones. Okay, most of you guys would have seen headlines like this one. Oh, I haven't put it on screen. This one, there we go. Over 50% of US hedge funds have exposure to Bitcoin as BTC crushes stocks in 2024. Crushes. Millennial Management holding 27,000 Bitcoin worth 1.7 billion. Why do I show you this headline? Why do I bring it up again? Because I do bring this up all the time. You guys know we do talk about hedge funds. Okay, if I were to share my screen here, you can actually see an old thumbnail that we did recently looking at the hedge funds. And why we have Ray Dalio's face on there is because Bridgewater Associates, number 2 biggest hedge fund in the world, does not yet have Bitcoin. You can see the chart. This is a previous video we did in May 2024. We said the fact that all of these hedge funds own Bitcoin is going to create a competitive dynamic in the hedge fund space. Why are we paying attention to the hedge fund space? Because they control $5 trillion worth of money. That's why we're watching what they're doing. And now we have one of the most successful hedge fund traders of all time, Tudor Jones, coming out once again 4 years later with another bullish Bitcoin prediction. I think this is going to create an absolute wave of FOMO. I don't think it is priced in. We can see by this chart here, 16 of the top 25 hedge funds all around the world already own Bitcoin. They own Bitcoin. They want Bitcoin. They've already said, okay, we agree. Maybe there is a great monetary inflation. Maybe, just maybe, Bitcoin is the escape valve for that. Okay, when we start considering what is going on around the world, I think maybe, just maybe, things could be accelerating pretty quickly here. Okay, I don't think many people are prepared for what the next 12 months could look like, especially when we have the ECB, the European Central Bank, releasing 30-page white papers where they're saying, we believe Bitcoin could go to $10 million a coin or more. Direct quote from the ECB. We actually broke all of that down in a live stream yesterday. You can see that on screen right now. New ECB report makes bullish Bitcoin price prediction. No, I'm not joking. That happened. It really did happen. If you missed that video, we're going to put a link for that video up on screen. I might put it somewhere around there when we finish this live stream. And with all that said, thank you so much to the 1,206 of you guys tuning in today. The live chat is lively as always. Tyler Green, PJT understands this beautifully. PTJ, math is inevitable. I think that's a